1. Firstly, I'd like to say that I live in a 3-room house, 1 kitchen and living room, with basement and bathroom. I'm 21 and I've been living there for 3 years now, so I'm very accustomed to the place, and rent is cheap, about $325 a month for all included. Last July, my friend and his boyfriend moved out. We moved in together, and another new girl, 19, moved in. She goes to university, and mostly just studies. No complaints there. Now this January we got a new roommate. At first glance, he looked friendly and kind of like an outdoor guy. He wears those rectangular rainbow reflection sunglasses inside. The first day he moved in, after maybe 30 minutes of talking, I knew I was in for a wild ride. He started explaining and showing me his peanut and walnut collection, and his organic seaweed collection. Now, I don't have anything against vegan people, but when he started moving my books away to put his being vegan books instead, nope. Here is an extensive list of things he's done so far since January of this year. Unplugged the fridge because it was too loud overnight when all the food in the fridge isn't his. Dumped his disgusting soup down the toilet, it clogged up, didn't bother unclogging it and just left the plunger for me to find in the morning. Unplugged the fridge again, a week later, even after we told him not to. Moved all the mousetraps and put them on the counter, where we put our food because it was off-putting to him. For context, the breaker is in his room. Stopped the breaker that also connects the landlord's electricity upstairs because he wanted to save electricity. Keeps closing all the lights even if we're there because he wants to save electricity. Threw away some of our cleaning products because he's allergic to them. Moved furniture around because it didn't suit him how they were displayed. Dumped more soup in the shower? Keeps using his obnoxiously loud blender at midnight or 1 a.m. He's literally a 2-year-old and only eats blended stuff. Asked our landlord's maid for money. Who does that? Lowers the temperature of the whole flat that we never touched before because it's too warm for him. Steals kitchenware in his room for whatever reason. Also, I've recently learned that this man is in his 40s, which makes it weirder for my roommate and I, who are basically in our start of 20s. Weirdest roommate I've ever had and probably will ever have. He even keeps knocking on my door when I'm in the middle of calls or stuff just to talk, because he's always in the kitchen. Horrible experience, and he keeps eavesdropping when I'm on calls with my girlfriend, and then asks me what I meant during our conversations afterwards. Genuinely baffling. Someone save me. 2. I'm a 24-year-old woman, live with 2 roommates. Angel, 23, female, and Britta, 21 and female. I've always had little issues with Angel within the year or so of living with her, mostly involving her partners. She doesn't like being alone, so she basically lets her current partner stay rent-free. I have no issues with them coming and going, but there were times where they would stay weeks at a time, and even be there when she's at work. Fast forward to November, I realized she'd been giving our spare key to her girlfriend. I asked her where it was, and she lied, saying she just left it in her room, even though her girlfriend straight up told me she was using it. So one day before work, I had lost my key and needed to use the spare, but it still wasn't where it belongs. I was frustrated because I knew I'd have to leave our door unlocked all day. I sent a text to our roommate group chat saying that the spare key needed to be returned to the drawer, and that the door wouldn't be locked. Angel responded with, "Please is a word that exists." Entirely fair, because I didn't say please, but also we all paid for that key, and the point of it was for us to use when we didn't have our keys. I was fed up, and told her I shouldn't have had to ask in the first place. This spiraled into a pretty large argument over text with her and I. I got so tired of everything I had dealt with over the past year that I let out quite a few grievances, including the fact that we have 2 cats and a dog living with us and we aren't allowed animals. She stated that she doesn't give a fuck, and instead of having a counter-argument, started to call me names and threaten me with things like putting mold in my bed. For context, at the time I was about 4 months pregnant. I didn't feel comfortable or safe going back to that house at night knowing she has a violent history, so I decided to stay at my mom's. I ended up staying with my mom permanently until our lease was up in March, because I couldn't afford to break it. I went over maybe 2 or 3 times to grab things like clothes, toiletries, blankets. In the middle of December, I went to grab a few more things, and this included a few items that were mine but I allowed my roommates to use. Serving trays, aprons, etc. I needed to use these for the holidays, so I took them over to my mom's. Later that day, I received a text from Angel stating that if I firstly didn't tell them when I was coming over to get things, that she would put a chain lock on the door, and that I needed to let her know what I was taking, so that they had a chance to replace it. This didn't seem super reasonable to me, but I wasn't in the mood to start anything, so I just didn't reply. Flash forward to this week. Our lease is up next month. I'm now 6-ish months pregnant, and I'm moving in with my boyfriend in a couple of weeks. I know I needed to start getting the rest of my things from the house, so I sent them a text that I would be by sometime during the weekend to get my kitchen stuff. So Saturday morning I go over with my mom and we pack up a lot of my kitchen things. For context, when we moved in, I provided all the kitchen stuff. I left them all my pots and pans, silverware, some Tupperware, baking trays, bowls, and they still had their own plates and cups. And I also packed up some of the things from my bedroom. Sunday morning, I then received a text from Angel that I should have made a list of everything I was taking, and that if I can't do that, then she's not allowing me in the house without someone else present. I replied that I let her know that I was getting kitchen stuff, and that I left them a lot. She then repeated that I needed to make a list and that I'm not allowed in the house without someone else. I told her that she's aware what's mine, and that I can go get my things as I please. She stated that I don't live there. I still pay rent, by the way, and that I need to respect those who do and to shut the fuck up. At this point, I was just confused on what the issue was and asked why it was a problem that I was just getting my stuff. She started calling me a bozo, and said that I still don't live there. I pay rent and am the primary on the lease, and cannot come and go as I please, and that she was going to get chain locks and throw all of my things in my room if I can't be a decent human being. At this point, I knew I wasn't going to get a civil conversation out of her, so I stopped replying. I'm planning on going back again next week and getting more of my things before the move. I really don't see the big deal here. Yes, I'm not staying there, but I still pay rent and I'm on the lease. And they have had so much time to buy their own things, but they continue to use mine. I'm not taking things to be petty. I'm just trying to get ready to move in a couple of weeks. Please let me know if I'm the a-hole. 3. I want to start this off by saying this is just a vent because I know that I am fucked. My roommate, a 31-year-old man, has been a nightmare from day one. He has been drunk literally every single day since he moved in back in September. Lost his job one week into living with me because he showed up to his job drunk and hasn't gotten another job since. 5 months later, and he finally ran out of money. I, a 30-year-old man, was putting up with him and his antics because I told myself, at least he is still paying rent and utilities. He has been loud and obnoxious late at night and not cleaned anything. Typical poor behavior. I'm screwed because we're both on the lease and I live in Massachusetts, which has very favorable tenant laws. Essentially, if I don't want my credit score to plummet, I have to pay for the whole apartment and his half of the rent. For context, I live in a 2-bed, 2-bath just outside of Boston. It's not cheap. I care about maintaining a good credit score for several reasons, but mainly, if I want to rent another property when I eventually get out of this lease, I need good credit to do so. My landlord is willing to let me break my lease if my shitty roommate agrees to vacate the property, but he won't, because if he leaves, he will be homeless. So, now I am being held hostage by a useless drunk bum who is essentially a 16-year-old in an adult body. My landlord is going to start the eviction process, but because of the laws in Massachusetts, it can and most likely will take 6 months to actually get him out of the property. In 6 months, the lease will effectively be up, anyways, so I'm stuck paying rent for the useless prick to live here for free. I can afford to pay the whole rent barely right now, but in order to not dip into my savings, I will be forced to get a second job. This is infuriating to me because I'm essentially working the job that he refuses to get, because he would rather drink all day. I know he has severe depression and mental health issues, but I have no sympathy for him anymore. Also, I met him through Reddit, ironically, so if he hears this, pay that man his money. 4. It's my first time ever having a roommate, so I'm not sure if I'm the one to blame or if she's just crazy. I moved in and everything seemed fine. But first, she said she has one rule with me. I'm not allowed to be in our dorm during the weekends, and I should tell her if I need the room during the weekend weeks in advance. And then, until like 3 days of us living together, she asked me if I'm okay with exchanging with her friend to be in another room. This might be weird, but I've lived only in a house at that point, so I really enjoyed living on the 8th floor. I told her I'd like to stay in the room, but I can give her a contact in our 3rd roommate to possibly ask her. She wasn't still moved in at that point, but she just said to leave it be then. Time was passing until one day she gave me a talking to and established new rules for me. I wasn't allowed to be on my laptop, it was too loud. I wasn't allowed to call with my family, I should leave the room if I want to, and I should stop stomping my feet. I was like, okay, sure, I'll stop doing that. Maybe my laptop is unusually loud, and maybe it's bad manners to call someone in a room filled with 3 people. Then she started waking me in the middle of the night, telling me I snore. Okay, sure. I started putting on 2 pillows at once to eliminate the problem. Then suddenly my things started shifting in my room. Things were in different places. She cleaned up my stuff from my desk and my spot in the bathroom. Okay, maybe I'm just messy. Until it culminated with me finding my toothbrush in my closet and my teddy bear, which was just on my bed, under the bed, and my bags hidden under my blankets. This all came to a head when I woke up with a guy in our 2.5 by 4 meter room, and they started doing the deed. I overcame my anxiety and told them twice to leave during their fun. I was ignored. I reported the incident, and since then she got more quiet about me, but still touched my stuff. All of this culminated into yesterday, when she started texting me all of a sudden about my studies and my new schedule for the semester. I told her about this crazy subject I'll have on Friday at 8 p.m. She then asked me if I'd still be around during Saturday, if it's so late, and I said yes, naturally. She then sent a huge text saying how this piece of information ruined the rest of her university career. She's on her 5th year of getting a master's. And how she doesn't want to throw me out of the room, but she basically is. And how this is so sad, and that we should solve this like adults, and that I should find another room. To say I blew up is an understatement. I told her that I felt like I only did the sacrifices in the room, and how all she did is touch my stuff, suck a dick in our room, and then ask me to go away. Then she told me I'm being unreasonable, saying in her 5 years of being in university, she never had a problem with any roommate, and if I think that she wanted to cast me out since the beginning. Why didn't she do so with our 3rd roommate? The 3rd is the same age as me. That I never try to understand her point of view, and that I'll understand once I've been in university as long as she has. So tell me, am I being unreasonable, and am I not accommodating enough? Like, maybe since she never had a problem before, maybe I'm doing something wrong that you guys can try to decipher out of my side of the story, since I am human, and I'll always think subjectively. Hellfreezer's note, I guarantee she definitely had problems with all of her other roommates. I'd wager if the OP could get in contact with other roommates, ask a few gentle questions, there'd definitely be problems there. This has to be brought up with the RA. It is antagonistic, it is bully behavior. It is indicative of someone who was probably an only child who got their way their whole life and can't stand having to share with other people. Now, I don't know what they're doing with the other roommate, but the whole thing sounds truly outrageous, and I wouldn't let it go on any further. 5. This story happened a few years ago when I was still in university. The key characters are my good roommate Ted, my asshole roommate who we'll just call R, and our landlord, and me. It's important to note that I attended school in a city that I didn't grow up in or near, and there was no family that lived here either. I was just finishing up my 3rd year of university when the family I had been renting a room from during the last 3 years of school informed me that their family was moving for work and would be selling the house. I understood, and decided that this would be a good time to find an apartment with some of the friends I had made at school. I asked around my various friend groups and classmates if anyone was looking for roommates and would be interested in getting a place with me for the fall. Out of all my friends, most of them had pretty secure living arrangements or were graduating that year. However, this is where Ted appears. Ted was just finishing up his 2nd year at that school and was thinking about moving into his own place, as he had been living on campus and wanted to go somewhere more private. The rooms in Ted's dorm hall were smaller, and he had a roommate. I liked Ted. He was nice, quiet, and we had a lot of similar interests, such as video games, TV shows, movies, etc. And we had gone out for drinks after classes quite frequently in the past year. I agreed to get an apartment with Ted, and we started looking for places that we'll be renting in the fall. During this search, we found what I thought would be the perfect place for us. It was a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom apartment with a separate en-suite laundry room, as well as a spacious living room and modest kitchen. The best part was that the bathroom was located between the bedrooms, essentially eliminating the chances of either of us disturbing the other if one of us was gaming while the other was studying. It also came in just under our budget, so it was pretty sweet. Enter R. R was your typical edgelord, black hair, black clothes, creepy or macabre paraphernalia that you know they had only because they thought it made them more edgy. He would try to talk to everyone about taboo or controversial topics nobody cared about, bragged about hacking into a professor's computer, and would argue about academic topics he knew nothing about with experts and students in that field of study. Now, R had heard through mutual friends that Ted and I started apartment hunting. He had been looking for new roommates and had been unsuccessful in finding any. Boy, do I know why now. He approached Ted and asked if he wanted to get a place together for the following year, and Ted politely told him that he and I had already found a place together. That should have been the end of it, but R is the type of person with what I like to call greasy charisma. In other words, he is very good at being manipulatively charismatic, but in a way that screams with cartoon villain vibes. I have always seen right through these kinds of people, and am always baffled when others can't. R convinces Ted that all 3 of us moving in together means cheaper rent, a bigger place, and since we all game, we can split the best internet in the city. He also tells Ted that since he has already given notice to leave his current place, that he needs somewhere to live ASAP, as he doesn't want to travel all the way home for the summer. Ted buys this and tells me that he wants to find a 3-bedroom so we can accommodate R. I have only met him once or twice before this, so I didn't know how bad he was yet, and I agreed. We don't go through with the 2-bedroom from earlier and instead find a 3-bedroom place that's about the same distance from the school. The landlord is willing to hold it for us until fall, since they normally rent to students and don't expect to be getting any immediate interest. Ted and I are happy to hear this, as we both planned on moving back to our respective hometowns to work summer jobs. R, however, is not. As previously stated, he wanted somewhere to stay over the summer, something he had mentioned to Ted, but not to me. Ted and I both asked him if he could just move home for the summer. His family lived much closer to our school city than either of ours, and we were both able to arrange to go home. R refused and said that he would just have to get the apartment for the summer as well. The landlord had no problems with this and said that we could move in as soon as the papers were signed, which would give us a free week before the first month. As long as Ted and I could pay a reduced rent and not have to pay for power, internet, or water for the time we weren't living there, as we really couldn't afford to. R agrees, as he has lots saved up, and we sign on. Ted and I decide to move stuff we don't want to take home into our rooms and make the move home easier. This is where things with R start going downhill fast. He complains that because we moved our stuff in right away, he wouldn't be able to use our rooms while we were gone, and demanded full rent from us as a storage fee. We didn't really want to argue, so we just paid the full rent, it wasn't that bad, and continued living at home for the remainder of the summer. When we moved into the apartment, about a week before classes started, we found that some of the boxes we had moved in were opened or moved around. We asked R about this, and he told us that he needed to borrow a few things, and that they had all been put back so we shouldn't worry about it. Now, a lot of things happened in the short amount of time that I lived with R, and if any of them sound interesting enough, I would be happy to write out all the full stories and elaborate details, but here's the gist of it. He took over the living room with furniture he bought and asked us to foot our share of the bill, even though both Ted and I each had brought our own furniture to use in the living room, and had been letting him use it all summer. Ted had mostly late classes that usually ended at about 11 p.m., and his earliest class was at about 4 p.m. Ted and I are very similar in the sense that we like to start our day with work or class and end it doing something enjoyable like gaming, reading, or watching a movie. This means that Ted would get up at about 2 or 3 p.m. every day, go to class until 11 p.m., come home and game. Ted was always really quiet and never bothered us by being awake all night. But R demanded that we have a lights-out policy in place and that everyone should be in bed no later than midnight. His reasoning had nothing to do with noise or that Ted's gaming kept him awake. Oh, no. His problem was just knowing Ted was awake and asleep at different hours than him was just not okay. No reason, he just didn't like it. We all had our own dishware sets and thought that keeping them separate would make cleaning easier. We each used our own plates and cutlery and washed our own plates and cutlery. R never washed his. When he ran out, he would use ours, and then he would use things that you normally wouldn't use as plates, such as Tupperware lids, just to avoid dishes. Not only that, but every dish he used would be stacked precariously inside our one-tub sink, all the way up past the faucet, making Ted and I have to move his mess to clean our own. R once decided to pull an all-nighter to finish a paper he was writing, and blasted his music through a sound system that shouldn't even be allowed in apartments. We didn't get any noise complaints from other apartments, but Ted and I were pretty pissed. I was trying to sleep, and Ted was gaming online with friends. When confronted, R said it was our responsibility to purchase earplugs, not his responsibility to keep the music down or use headphones. He stole money from Ted constantly, gift cards, cash, even took and used his credit card on a few occasions. R refused to accept cash or checks when it came to reimbursing him for bills he paid for, e-transfers only, which were new enough at the time, maybe a few years old, that Ted and I didn't really use online banking that much and preferred to write checks. One positive thing is we learned pretty quick how to use banking apps, but seriously, cash is legal tender, so are checks. He just didn't want to go to the bank to deposit it, which is fair, but is better than one of us fucking up your transfer and you end up with nothing. I once woke up to R entering my room, and when I freaked out, he said he thought I was in class and wouldn't be there, like, WTF, man? Why would you go in my room when I'm in class anyways? Class had been cancelled that day, and I didn't tell anyone because it wasn't important. I kept my valuables in a locked cabinet after that. Finally, and this one's a doozy, R disabled the security alarm on our fire escape. It was set up to go off if anyone opened the window onto the fire escape, and climbed all the way up to the roof. Now, this building was tall enough that you could see over a lot of other buildings in the area, and it was also host to some equipment that belonged to a local radio station. They paid our landlord to have a signal booster or something like that on top of our building. We had seen them doing what looked like maintenance to it the day before. R comes back talking about how the tower was fenced in and locked, but that he had gotten over it and whoever had done maintenance on it had left some equipment behind. You are showing off random tools, hardware, a spool of wire, and what appears to be some sort of broadcasting dish with an antenna on it. I am pissed. Not only has he been the worst person to live with, but he has now gone and sabotaged the security and fire alarm system and stolen equipment from a restricted area. I decided to finally get my revenge and throw him off by telling him the stuff he stole is pretty cool, stroking his massive ego and making him smile like a puppy, getting a pat on the head. I informed Ted of what happened, and we formulate our plan. We first send an email to landlord informing him of the situation and asking him to keep our names out of it if he decides to do anything. He agrees and says he will contact the radio station. The entire building receives an email from landlord within a week stating that equipment and tools have been stolen from the roof of the building and that the radio station and the landlord are getting the police involved. The email also asks for anyone with information to send it to the landlord, and states that an inspection will be done for all apartments to make sure the fire escape windows are intact and that no one has broken or disabled them. R freaks out. He has no idea how to fix the window before the inspection, and the evidence is sitting right on top of his desk. Ted and I play along and freak out too, asking him to tell exactly what happened so we can try and see what options we have. He relays the whole story, not knowing that both Ted and I are recording this conversation. We ask plenty of clarifying questions and chime in with our own ideas now and again, so that we are active contributors to the conversation. The law where we went to school states that any audio recording is legal to be used as evidence both in and out of court if at least one active contributor agrees. We send a copy of that recording to the landlord. I later get a phone call from the landlord saying that he wants to evict R, but local states that he is unable to evict only one tenant in an apartment, so he would have to evict all three of us. I understand and let Ted know. The landlord also said that he would put in that we paid out our contract and left early, so that we wouldn't have issues renting in the future. But that R's record would say evicted. He also let me know that if I could convince R to return the stuff that he stole, then the radio station would drop the charges. Apparently they were willing to forget it ever happened if the tools were anonymously returned, but would have to press charges if the thief came forward. I don't know if that's true or not, but it's what I was told. I then told R that the landlord had inspected the apartment and knew it was us. We were being evicted, and unless he put the stuff back, we were also going to be charged. I lied a little to make it seem like we were all in the same boat. I could not have said anything, and he would have been charged. But I wasn't going to do that. He returned the stuff to the roof, and we all moved out. I moved to a one-bedroom apartment that cost more, but I've never regretted it. Ted moved in with another friend, and things went well for them. I haven't seen R since the eviction. I heard that he was having trouble finding a place, and that wasn't his first eviction. Turns out he didn't give notice to leave his last place before moving in with us. He was evicted from there as well. I have since moved away from that city, and am currently living with my wife in her hometown. She is the best roommate I have ever had. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Bad Roommates. Episode 3, I know. Yeah, I'm still doing them. It's just been quite a while, I think years literally at this point. But here we are, number 3. Hopefully we can do a number 4 soon. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use and sent in stories for use in this video, and a big apology to the author of the last story. You sent me that story in 2020. I've never forgotten about stories, it just sometimes takes me a while to get around to them. If you'd like early access to these videos, then support me on my Patreon, which is linked in the description, as is the link to the Hellfreezer merchandise store on Teespring. And if you especially enjoyed today's video, why not leave a tip? You can do that by clicking on the heart with a $sign in the middle, just below the video. But you don't have to. Thank you if you choose to. Okay, I don't think there's any other business today, so let's move right along to Hellfreezer's question of the day. And today's question is: do any of you listening have a home improvement project that you keep putting off? I do have one. Currently right now at the bottom of the stairs there is a box that has 2 bathroom shelves in it. I need to put them up. I bought them several months ago. And they're not doing me any good sitting there. And it'd be a lot more useful if they're actually mounted up on the wall. I just need to have enough motivation one day to actually just drill into the wall. Not that it would take long. I think it's 4 screws at most. There we are. There is some other little projects. I've got a refrigerator which still thankfully works, but some of the shelves are broken in it. I've got what I need to fix them, I just haven't got around to it yet. So why don't you let me know what some of yours are in a comment below. And before we go, we'll have an answer of the day from a previous video. It won't be the last Bad Roommates video because I wasn't doing questions of the day back then, but I'm sure we'll find something. And today's answer comes from Emerald Angel, and this is from Revenge's Ice Cream 311. I think it was about our left and our right Twix is different, something like that. Or is there a difference between the left and the right Twix? I think that's what it was. And their answer was, I am a simple woman. I see the Twix, I have the munchies. I eat the Twix, be it left or right. Rest assured, I will eat. Which I think we can all relate to. Num num num. Okay. And with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.